A first step has been taken, in the sense that they have asked for a report. The king has wanted to get the facts right, to get the facts in his hand. And I think it would be helpful from then to start a national reconciliation process, to bring about, to bring Bahrainis together to see what is the next step. It is not for me, an Iranian journalist sitting in London, to tell, you know, Bahrainis what to do. But I think, as Mr. Al-Jamri has said, and as Dr. Abdul Rahman is saying in Bahrain, it should be up to the Bahraini people, regardless of their religion, regardless of their sect, regardless, to sit together and want to do something for the country itself.
Mr. Abdul Rahman, I'm sure you'll agree with Nazanin's comments there, but how quickly does this need to take place? There is fear in the international community that if something doesn't happen fast, we'll see a return to violence. Would you agree with that?
My dear sir, any reform requires two sides. Not only the government, but the people as well. As long as the community do not sit to think logically, and as long as they do not themselves from the influence of the clergies, I can't see any peaceful future. And I will say it bluntly, because the mullahs, they want to have the control over their followers. Those mullahs, their interest is not in what Bahrain to be a democratic society. They cannot tolerate that, they cannot accept that. To make you understand, and please give me a chance to talk, to make you understand, from the Sunni sect, people are very independent, meaning that tomorrow, if the highest authority of Sunnis, which is either in Al-Azhar, Egypt, or Mecca in Saudi Arabia, brings any or any communique, they don't take it. We are educated people, and we think for ourselves. On the other hand, the Shias, they have got a reality that they are facing. For example, is the Eid. Eid is the occasion after the fasting time, for example, or after the pilgrimage of Mecca. Now, in one house in one, they are followers of Ayatollah Sistani, and the others, they are followers of Ayatollah Khamenei. So you will find that the father and his daughter will be celebrating the Eid, and the son not. So they are divided by the virtue of the mullahs, or by the reality of mullahs. Now, as long as they take their orders, as long as the reality is towards the person who they believe that he is the messenger between them and God, how can society flourish? How can a government plan a project that will benefit everybody when there are people that they tell them don't accept that because this is against the will of God?
Well, let's put that point to Mr. Al-Jamri. We'll come back to you, Mr. Abdul Rahman. We'll come back to you in just a moment, but I just want to put that exact point to Mr. Al-Jamri. How do you see the divide between the two communities being healed? I think we may have lost our guest in New York, Nazanin.
If I may interject, you know, in Iran, we've got the 12th Jafari sect. We've got the traditional form of Islam. And this 12th Jafari sect, what we believe is that there has to be a separation of religion, mosque, from state. That is the basic rule of a modern society. That religion has to have its own space, and government has to have its own space. What 1979 revolution has taught Iranians is that actually the biggest loser is the mosque, the biggest loser is religion. People are turning away from religion because at one point the decisions a modern progressive government has to take decisions that might, if, for example, if you bring in religious edicts into it, it will just destroy the entire religious dogma. That is what has happened in Iran, that no one is taking their cue anymore from the clerics. And therefore, I think, as many modern, progressive-minded women in Iran and men in Iran do think, is that everything has to have its own place. Religion has to be privatized, for private use.
I know Mr. Abdul Rahman wants to come back in. What are your further thoughts on that? And I think we've...
You cannot practice democracy when the loyalty of the citizens is towards democracy. This is a science that you have to go through it. Democracy means democracy, and it means that no religious person has the right, or will be given the right, or will be allowed to interfere in the future of the nation who believes in democracy. Now, if you go back to the story of our uprising, you'll find that Al-Wafaq, that the Shia party, they were holding 18 seats in parliament. The minute some thugs and hooligans, they came into demonstrating in the roundabout, they just surrendered to the will of the people that they were supposed to guide them, the members of the parliament. When the problem, they should be there to analyze, to explain, to calm them down, that we will be able to solve all these things constitutionally. Unfortunately, instead of doing that, they joined the mob and they resigned from their seats. Now, what you call that, is that not surrendering to the order of theocracy? Because the theocrats, they said, those are people that they are in the roundabout, they are right. Now, I can't see, realistic, I can't see any future if the mentality of our Shia brothers will not change. Because if they want to live under a democratic regime, if they want constitutional monarchy, from the very first day they should say that theocracy be banned, only to operate where there is a mosque and where there is house of God. But to take the theocratic attitude and impose upon democracy, this is that it will never work anywhere. And it took Western world centuries to separate church politics.
Okay, well,
unfortunately now we are finding people are imposing that.
That's a very interesting point. From what you say, this is going to be a very long journey through reform that may hit many barriers. How can we remove those barriers and make sure that reform does start?
It is the time that the Shias themselves, they should eradicate this obstacle from the future of Bahrain.
Okay, let's just head to New York. I
don't think the government.
Mansour Al-Jamri is back with us on the line. Mr. Al-Jamri, we've been discussing the reforms that must take place. We're about to come into those in further detail, but it's acknowledged in Bahrain now by the king and the government that reforms will start. Mr. Abdul Rahman is suggesting that there are too many obstacles in the way for that to get underway. What are your thoughts?
Well, there are, of course, many obstacles every time, anywhere in the world. If there is a will, there is a way, and the will that we need to reform, we need to bring everybody. We need first of all, the leadership in the country to take the lead in exhibiting a uniform policy that is applied to everybody in the country. We look to start by equality before the law. And I think that the first thing we need an independent body that is respected by all people of Bahrain, and that these people abide by the recommendations that came in the report, and they need to tackle that situation. We need also structural reforms. These structural reforms must take place now before it is too late. I think if we do not implement them, we will not go anywhere. Structural reforms, we need to give a preference to the notion of citizenship, to the notion of development, and to be less on security conscience, which is basically you need to create lots of superstitions about the other. If we are to educate ourselves, first of all, we must learn that we are all human beings. There is no difference between black and white. There is no difference between Shias and Sunnis. There is no difference between us whatsoever. We're all human beings. We all, 97% of all human beings agree on the good things. There are maybe 3% of evil people anywhere in any societies, no matter whether they're Christians, Jews, or whatever. So we need to believe in the 97% people of the good people and depend on them rather than and concentrate on 3% of evil people and then assume that 100% of people are evil. No, I think we're all good people. We need to start with a good intention. You're
obviously talking about treating everyone equally. Completely understand that. Nazanin, what about men and women? Is there a role for women in this new reform process?
Obviously, women have to have equal rights. They are citizens, as Mr. Al-Jamri said. It is the quest for citizenship, popular sovereignty. You know, in the Middle East, in that part of the region, even before Russia had its own revolution, Iran was the first country to have a constitutional revolution. And it was to bring popular sovereignty. So the whole question of democracy in the Middle East, we turn it into Hakimiyat Milli, popular sovereignty, whereas that citizens become sovereign, that no longer does the sovereignty belong only to God or only to the ruler, that it is shared and it is the legitimacy that the people give to the sovereign that makes him a leader. And I think it is high time for us in the Middle East to have leaders that lead by example. Lead by example, not to go after guns, not to go after nuclear weapons, not to go after more warships, but rather to how they treat their citizens and how they treat their citizens to respect one another. And at the end of the day, the whole question of democracy, the principle of democracy is based on certain principles of human rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And if you abide by that, then I don't think we will have such a problem. In Iran, for example, tomorrow we have a whole, here at the Foreign Press Association, they have sent us 15,000 women, have sent us a banner from inside Iran decrying and protesting all these new laws that are being introduced in the Islamic Parliament in Tehran that discriminates against women. Mr. Abdul Rahman talked about how Bahraini women were the first ones to have the right to drive in the Middle East. In Iran, we were the first ones to we started our education in 1800s. We had our first right in 1963. So this whole question, why is it that the Bahrainis, why is it that the Iranians outside of their countries, living in the Western communities, Western world, can enjoy the fruits of democracy, can be Democrats? And why is it that we say that no, inside their own countries they cannot be? That is a fallacy, a Western fallacy that looks at us Middle Easterners as less than what Westerners are.
But we have seen women as part of the agenda in other parts of the Arab Spring. It's certainly spreading to some respect. I wonder what our two editors think about this and the involvement suggested by Nazanin there about women being involved with the reform process in Bahrain. Let's head to New York first and get the thoughts of Mr. Al-Jamri.
Yes, I believe that the Bahraini women have been ahead of other women in the Gulf region in many fields. And I believe they are an integral part. They will need to be more empowered into this reform process that could be initiated any time. They've already proven their abilities, and I am so thrilled that the Bahraini